A Redditor asks, which single player video games would you consider a masterpiece? Chrono Trigger. Legendary game. I've played this once every year for the last 3 years. It's different every single time. If they ever decide to reboot this series, I hope it lives up to the name. There was a guy somewhere online that tried to make it with PS1 style graphics, like the 3D Final Fantasy games, but they got a cease and desist. They only had a few images of a bridge and one enemy. Honestly, as much as I'd like more in the Chrono series, I don't think the current Square Enix is up to the task. They've not done a good job with their old titles over the last decade or so. Yeah, at least Atlas is picking up the slack. Doom, the classic one. Also, Doom 2016. Also, Doom 2. Speaking of, when the hell is Doom Eternal releasing? Yeah, Doom 2016 was a masterpiece, even by itself. Even if it hadn't been attached to an amazing franchise, it still would have been good. Not only was Doom a masterpiece, it was also a watershed moment in video gaming. I'd go so far as to say there are two eras of video games, before Doom and after. I get your point with regard to the birth of the FPS genre, but I'd argue that ID's next title, Quake, was more the watershed moment. That's when networked play actually became decent, and thus popular. I'd argue that Quake is a great improvement on Doom, but Doom was really the turning point. Doom introduced the glorious world of WoDs, though, and you could still play Doom multiplayer pretty okay even back in the day. I remember my dad playing it with his friends over 56k circa 95. I love the Doom games, don't get me wrong, but I'm probably the only person in the world who thought Doom 3 was the best. Might get a lot of hate for saying that, but I genuinely really love that one the best. It was survival horror, which is one of my favorite genres. All the rest to me is just shoot 1,000 enemies and make it to the elevator. And if people love that, then I'm glad you had fun. I don't think Okami has been mentioned yet, so I'll mention it. Okami is truly a blessing. I had never been so gripped by a story before playing this game. It left me feeling as if I had read a literary classic. I was a stubborn, jaded kid with high standards when I discovered that game, and it just blew me away. Yup, I've had fun games, exciting games, interesting games. Never before Okami had I stopped to think about how beautiful a game could be. Plus a big story with lots and lots to do. I was so disappointed it was an initial failure. Clover shut down, then it took off. What wonders would Clover be doing now if Okami's genius was recognized right off? Super Metroid. Metroid Prime 2. Prime is the only game I fully lost myself in. At times I wasn't playing a game, I was simply surviving. As I leveled up, it didn't feel tedious to go back to earlier sections, it felt satisfying to annihilate the previous obstacles. Zelda, A Link to the Past. That little 16-bit system was not only entertaining for you, but for your cats. If you had the TV on the floor and went to the village, you could spend hours running around the village and your cat would chase Link. I keep realizing a lot of these SNES games aged so well. They really did. Some people say it's all nostalgia, but I disagree. I recently played Chrono Trigger for the very first time. Zero nostalgia attached. I wanted to play what has often been hailed as one of the greatest RPGs of all time. I assumed for sure that it would be a janky mess by modern standards. Instead, it's one of the best games I've ever played. Even the 16-bit graphics are endearing in a way. I wouldn't change a damn thing. It's a masterpiece. Have you looked into the A Link to the Past randomizers? Revitalize the game for me. I grew up with this game and can beat the entire thing in a week now, so doing the randomizer is great. I heard Ocarina of Time randomizer is nuts. 100% is wild. God of War. I'm assuming you mean the 2018 title, and goddamn, it's genuinely shocking that I had to scroll so far down to see it here. At its core, it's a simple hack and slasher, but it can also verge on legitimately tactical gameplay if you want to take it there. Such a fun game, through and through. And dear god, the writing. A compelling story, told exceedingly well. For my money, it's the best game of the last 5 years, at least, as far as a total package is concerned. The original from 2005 is also wonderful. Aries. The end of GoW3 was the perfect end to the trilogy. I agree. I'm definitely glad they made another GoW game, because I love Kratos and playing with the mythology of the respective settings. But if they ended it on GoW3 it would have been a fitting end. It truly felt like Kratos' story was done, and it was a genuinely great end to his character. That said, I'm still looking forward to the inevitable next one. I was so into that game, then I read a mega spoiler about it by accident. Could not even play it after. Pretty pissed. The Valkyries were really good boss fights. A lot of people didn't bother to down the queen, which is a shame. This game means something. Moved to tears, and shocked and awed so many times. Played Hellblade: Sinner's Sacrifice? That game is freaking tits. I loved the new God of War, and felt empty after I finished it. Found Hellblade and felt full again. I can't play that game in a dark room with headphones. Messed with my head for a few days after I beat it. All good games should affect you in one way or another. Messed with my head in a way that I was hearing the voices like I had a temporary mental illness. But maybe they were going for something like that. They definitely were. They spent a lot of time studying psychosis and interviewing people with it to make it as realistic as possible. I'm really amazed that game wasn't a AAA title. So underrated in my opinion. For F's sake, Kingdom Hearts 3 is AAA, and it was trash. Tetris. Thank you. Tetris forever. Tetris truly is a masterpiece. The only puzzle game I've found that compares is Hexic. Well, Hexic was also made by Alexei Pajitnov, so there's your correlation. How did I not know that? It's criminal that I even had to control F to find this. Other games in this thread might be good, great, amazing, etc., but masterpiece fairly applies to a select few. Tetris is among them. Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2. KOTOR 2 is better in all the right ways than KOTOR, until you hit that part. Then it's such a letdown. To me, even playing with the restored content mod, a lot of it just felt like it had a much grander and interesting vision that truly built on KOTOR 1, but unpolished and at odds with itself in execution. Which isn't unheard of from Obsidian. The story and themes were phenomenal, but actually clashed with a lot of the decision making and gameplay mechanics, still being rewarded for doing purely black or purely white things. The combat in general added some new stuff, but it wasn't as balanced as KOTOR's was. The experiences on the planets in general were major steps down with the exception of Nar Shaddaa, which was phenomenal. Very little actual choice making, or changing the outcomes of planets you visit, often hyperlinear, without as many interesting side quests. And the final planet and ending were absolute garbage. The character cast outside of Kriya was not nearly as memorable. After playing for the first time with the restored content mod, I went to the wiki that detailed everything it added, and I was shocked by how much I took for granted in the game that plain wasn't there before. So before it was even restored, it was also super bare bones in a lot of ways. So overall, I think if their vision had been fully realized it would have been better than KOTOR 1. Unfortunately it wasn't to me, so I consider it almost a masterpiece. Maybe I was just super young when I played it. It was the first video game with a story that I ever played / completed, but I remember all of the characters super well. Kriya and the betrayal I felt there. Atom and the tragedy of his story. Brianna was basically my first crush. Cyan was super spooky, as was Nihilus. And I thought Mandalorians were just the coolest ever. Loved roaming around that planet. Mass Effect. Rex. Shepard. Rex. Shepard. Rex. Good talk. We'll bang. Okay. F the council. Counselor. Shepard, are you calling us simply to hang up on us again? Shepard, you know it. Click. Joker, that never gets old. I love Mass Effect and was immediately hooked when I started playing. This was the game where I stopped wondering why it was fun to replay a game you had already finished. This is only one of 2 games series with storylines that I have replayed end to finish, and the only one I have finished several times. You know how there is always a thread asking which game you want to experience for the first time again? Well, while it is really tempting to do so, I don't think I want that for Mass Effect, since every time I replay the trilogy I always find some new things or do something else. There are so many details, no way you can just appreciate that in a first playthrough. Furthermore, I never even hated the ending in Mass Effect 3. 99% of the games were a masterpiece and were resolved in an incredibly satisfying way. Sure, the ending could have been better or different, but I don't absolutely hate it either. There are limits, what games can do, and having one last final grandiose choice, where honestly none of the 4 options have optimal outcomes, is perfectly in line of Mass Effect in my opinion. If there is anything I don't like, aside from the dreams, is actually FemShep's official look. I thought it was very lazy done. I even love Andromeda. Yeah, it took a bit to get used to it, but when I got over the fact that these were not Alliance soldiers, but civilians looking for a new home, it suddenly clicked and started to like the Pathfinder. Haven't replayed it yet, but definitely will this summer. I love the Mass Effect series. I know it is a bit of a futile hope, but I really hope either a new installment comes along, could be a sequel to Andromeda, or could be something new entirely, that is single player, or some new franchise comes along. However, there hasn't been any game that was as magical to me as Mass Effect was. I think at some point there will be more Mass Effect, it's just too giant of a property to let lie. And I'm with you, Mass Effect is up there in the top tier of entertainment for me, alongside Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and Calvin and Hobbes. Just truly life-changing and an amazing joy to experience. Thanks for watching. And guys, let me know in the comments which single player video games you consider a masterpiece.